Would you help me welcome Brian in the house? Yeah.
Intros like that make me seem a lot cooler than I am. I'm not that cool, I promise. I'm a normal dude. How many of you know seriousness is not a fruit of the Holy Spirit? Some of y'all don't believe that. How many know God's not serious? I could prove it to you. He created you. Before we jump into tonight, I'm going to be preaching the gospel. But before we do, I want you to realize something. That when you read the Bible, you have to realize how raw and how real it was. A lot of times we read the Bible through this romantic lens, and it makes it almost impossible for it to be lived. Now, how many of you remember growing up, maybe you grew up in church, you grew up in Sunday school, you heard stories about Noah, right? Ever heard the story of Noah? Now, most people, just keyboard on, most people think that this is how the story of Noah went. Noah, build me a boat. That's not what happened. There was no keyboard player, no worship team. There wasn't people shouting down Noah for the message he heard God give him. It was very raw, very real. I can imagine his friends, hey, what are you doing? Just building a boat. Why? It's gonna rain. What's rain? I don't know. Could you imagine how insane this guy looked? Could you imagine Moses, if he would have got up tonight for testimony night, what it would have looked like? Hey guys, how are you? My name is Moses. Good to see you all. Burning bush talking to me outside. Some of y'all be like, bro, you burning the bush. Are you good, right? I'm from California. Smelled a lot of that stuff. Do you understand that the Bible is raw? It's real. I realized how real it was when my 4-year-old daughter got in the car one day with me, and she said, Daddy, you're not going to believe it. She said, I was afraid today, and I was in the car with Mom, and I was overcome with fear. And my daughter's been super smart from when she was young. I mean, she would ask these crazy questions at such a young age. I remember one time she got in the car, she's like, Dad, can Satan be forgiven? I'm like, go ask your mother. You know, my daughter's always been this deep thinker. She gets in the car, she's like, Daddy, you're not gonna believe it. Today I was overcome with so much fear. And I told Mom, and Mom said that if I accepted Jesus into my heart and gave my life to him, that my fear would go away, because I was so afraid. I'm like, well, what did you do? I'm sitting here listening. Because my daughter had a very different life than I did. I didn't grow up with godly parents like she has. So I'm sitting there listening, and she goes, Daddy, I gave my life to Jesus. She starts telling me this in the car. And I'm sitting there, and this phrase hits my mind. It's a phrase I want to share with you tonight. It's that the gospel is for everyone. See, the problem with rooms like this is you got very hungry people for God. You got people that love God, but in the mix of all of this, you have believers or people that aren't believers that kind of feel like, where is my place? I don't know if you've ever been in rooms like that. Rooms like this are powerful, but it's very easy to blend in and not really be seen by anybody. My daughter says this, and I get this phrase, the gospel's for everyone. And I want to tell you a story tonight. It's a story that I've only been sharing for a few years. I want to tell you the story of what happened in my life before I came to Christ. For about almost a decade, I would tell stories of after Jesus, because those are really awesome. A few years back, I started telling the story of my life of what happened before Jesus. See, I was born to 2 teenage parents. My mom was 15 years old when she got pregnant with this beautiful thing right here. 15 years old. I'm born and raised California. We left California last year. We wanted to live in America. I could say that I was born and raised Cali. My mom and dad They get pregnant very young. My dad's a teenager, my mom's a teenager. They freak out, they don't want to tell my grandparents. So they get in the car, my dad's truck, and they drive as far as they can from the Bay Area all the way to Anaheim, California, where I was born. So they get in the car, they drive, and they don't tell anybody. This was the days where there was no cell phones. They had like pagers back in the day, okay? So they drive, they get there. My dad gets a fake ID. It's LA, gets a fake ID. He starts working in a grocery store. My mom's sleeping in the back of my dad's camper shell in his truck. And that's when the abuse started. My mom would tell me stories of the abuse that she would go through as a teenager pregnant with me. Stories of verbal abuse. Stories of being drugged by her hair through parking lots. This was all before I was born. See, if you look at me tonight, you're like, man, you just have had a great life. You don't understand the life I've had. My wife looks at me constantly. She's like, you are a picture that grace is real. Tonight is not about the great exploits and I've done this in schools and we reach a million people is this big in comparison to what's happened in here. My mom starts telling me the stories of all that she began to go through. All before I was born. She didn't have one checkup her entire pregnancy until she starts getting contractions. They take her into the hospital on October 10, 1990. I was born. Now I'm a real 90s baby. You 97, you ain't 90s. I was born in the days of Tamagotchis, Rugrats, Doug, PlayStation 1, Crash Bandicoot, Game Boy, Pokemon when it wasn't like this, Rocco's Modern Life, cartoon. I'm just playing, we keep going. But I was born in the 90s. And you would think that when my birth happened that things would get better, but it didn't. The abuse would progress and progress. I remember being 6 years old, and whenever I heard the words, go to your room, it meant one thing. Mom was about to get beat. I remember being a boy running to my room, grabbing toys in my room, action figure toys, Batman, Power Rangers, and breaking them, weeping and rocking because of the abuse that was happening on the outside of my bedroom door. I remember holes in the walls, blood everywhere. This was my life. And if you think it couldn't get worse, it did. At the age of 9.5, almost 10 years old, I hear the worst words that any kid could hear. We're getting a divorce. And you may say a divorce doesn't affect the kids, and you're right, it doesn't affect the kids, it destroys them. For those of you who are in this room and you're a product of divorce, you can understand that although abuse is absolutely wrong and it's terrible, when your parents are together as a kid, there is still a glimpse of hope that just maybe you could have a normal life. I remember watching movies and seeing people at the mall saying, well, maybe one day, maybe I'll be able to have a mom and a dad like that. All of a sudden, my parents go through the worst divorce you could think of. I remember being inside of courtrooms. These courtrooms, they put me in these glass rooms and lawyers would watch how I would play with my dad and watch how I would play with him. I'm trying to figure out where I was to live. And my dad eventually wins the court case. He wins the ability to have me live with him, and something called every other weekend started. If you come from a divorced family, you know what that means. That means every other weekend you're showing up at your other parent's house. Well, for me, it was my mom. And there was always a meetup spot. If you're a divorced kid, you know there's always that one spot that you meet at every other weekend. That spot for me was Jack in the Box in Lathrop, California. Every other weekend, my dad would drop me off on Friday, pick me up on Sunday. But this one Sunday he picked me up changed my life forever. Get done with my mom. My mom had gotten remarried within that duration very quickly. My dad wasn't too happy. And my dad was going for full custody because he didn't want to pay any child support. He didn't want to do any. He's like, I just want to go for full custody, no visitations. And it was really the last straw to get my mom for things that he felt she did to him. So this one Sunday, he picks me up. I'm 10 years old. I get in the car. I go, hey, Dad. He goes, hey, son. We're driving. And out of nowhere, he goes, hey, I just want to let you know that your mother doesn't love you. I'm 10. I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah, well, I just want to let you know your mom doesn't love you. In fact, this is why she got remarried. She wants another family now. She wants other kids, and she doesn't love you anymore. And I'm like, I'm so confused. I'm like, what do you mean mom doesn't love me? Like, I was just with mom. She's like, no, she doesn't love you. That's why she got remarried. Trust me, she just doesn't want you. And all of a sudden I get angry and I says, well, if she don't want me, then I don't want her. And he goes, awesome, can you say that in court next week? I said, yeah. So next week comes and we go to court. I remember standing before a judge saying, I don't ever want to see this woman again. It would be 5 years before I'd ever see my mom again. All of a sudden, let's fast forward, I'm 15 years old. I'm at this event that this church had put on. I'm not a Christian at all, furthest thing from it. But they had free food. And I'm Hispanic, and I'll take anything for free. Like an amen. That's why y'all love Jesus, because he's free, right? But he'll cost you everything. So I show up to this event, and I run into this woman that I would never expect to run into. Her name was Lupe. Lupe was my babysitter when I was like 5 years old. So I run into Lupe, and she goes, Brian? I'm like, Lupe? She goes, what are you doing here? I'm like, it's like free food, I came. She's like, oh my God, how have you been? I said, I've been all right. She goes, well, have you talked to your mom lately? I said, my mom? I said, why would I talk to my mom? I said, I haven't talked to that woman in 5 years. I said, my mom wanted nothing to do with me. She goes, Brian, what are you talking about? She goes, I've been talking to your mom, and she's been looking for you for 5 years. She's been sending cards every holiday. She's been calling on your birthdays and leaving voice messages. Little did I know, every card went to the trash and every voice message got deleted. It never got to me. I says, wait, you're telling me that my mom loves me, like she wants me? Yeah, your mom wants you. She loves you. I said, you got her number? Yeah. I said, call her right now. So she pulls out her Nokia Metro PCS. T9, you remember that? No apps. You actually had a life back then. So I call, phone rings, and this man answers, my stepdad. He goes, hello? I said, hey, remember I'm 15 now. Is my mom there? He goes, who is this? I said, it's Brian. He goes, hey, Tamar. He goes, this guy's on the phone. He says it's your kid. So my mom picks up, and the moment she says hello, we both instantly start weeping. I'm like a 10-year-old boy, and I'm like, Mom, I'm sorry. She's like, stop, I need to see you. When can I see you? I said, Mom, I'd love to see you, but we can't do that. Dad's gonna get so mad. She goes, I have to see you. So the whole next week, we're devising this plan of how I could see my mom. I'm borrowing my friends' phones at school. I'm giving them like my $2 lunch money, and I'm like, can I use your phone for like 5 minutes? I'm calling my mom. Most 15-year-olds are calling their girlfriends. I'm calling my mom. I'm just like trying to like get this meetup with my mom, and finally we lock in that we're gonna meet up at the park by my house. I'll never forget that moment. 5 years of believing this woman wanted nothing to do with me. And here she is. She looks at me. The first thing she says is, what happened to you? We hug, we weep. But then I have to get going. I got to get home. It's getting dark. And I'm like, Mom, I can't be here much longer. She goes, so do you want to see me longer? I said, I'd love to see you, but I can't. She goes, well, guess what? This weekend coming up, according to that 5-year court order, although your father won, I still have 20% custody, and I'm still able to see you if you want. I said, Mom, I would love to, but there is no way Dad will ever let me see you. She goes, it's my weekend. If you want to see me, I'll come. I said, I want to see you. Come. The only problem is my dad. Now, my dad is not this person anymore. I don't want you to think my dad's a monster. He's completely changed of who he is today, but this was back then. This is not who he was back then. So I told my mom, here's what we're going to do. Saturday morning, Mom, you're going to come to the house. Friday night, I'm gonna put everything I own and that's dear to my life outside Friday night so you could load it up Saturday morning. And everything dear to my life was like my PlayStation and pizza pockets. It wasn't nothing crazy. A couple Capri Suns. But I put everything that I loved outside Friday night. Y'all hearing me? Y'all with me? So I put it out Friday night. And then what I did is I put my clothes on and I put pajamas over my clothes. I'm like, I'm gonna have to book it in the morning. And so I told my mom, come at this time, Dad's asleep. But the next day, my dad had gotten up a little bit earlier than normal. So my mom shows up and there's a knock on the door. I open my bedroom door and my father's standing right there. And I don't know if you grew up in a Hispanic home, but we were taught never to answer the door when it's knocked on. Shh, 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 right? We all start going into our rooms. My dad goes, shh, get back, get back, get back. And my dad opens the door, and it's not my mom, it's a cop. I'm like, oh, man. And the cop was with my mom. And the cop goes, excuse me, sir, good to see you. Is there a Brian Barcelona here? It's my dad's name. He goes, yeah, it's me. He goes, no, is there another Brian here? He goes, oh, you're talking about my son? He goes, yeah, I'm just here with his mother, and it's her weekend, and, you know, legally she's let me know that she still has some custody, and she's able to see her son if her son wants to see her. And my dad goes, you know, he goes, she said there's a court order. And my dad goes, there is no court order. It's a lie. The cop goes, do you get child support, sir? He goes, well, yeah, I get child support. He goes, so you get child support on a non-court order? My dad goes, oh yeah, that court order. He goes, look, my son doesn't want to see his mom. Now I'm standing behind the wall shaking. I'm 15 years old. I am terrified of what's about to happen when that door closes. And the cop goes, listen, sir, if your son wants to see his mom, he could see his mom. And my dad goes, no, thank you. He doesn't want to see her. Have a good day. And he begins to close the door. And I'll never forget what happened next. All of a sudden, the cop puts his foot in the door. Hold on. And he looks at me all the way down the hallway. And he goes, hey, if you want to come, you can come. Now, I got saved when I was 16. I was an atheist. I went to a church because this guy bought me a Jamba Juice. I didn't care to be there. I sat in the back like this, like some of you. I was like, dude, let the service be done. I'm gonna get out of here, get my Jamba Juice. And I don't know what it was like. I don't know what it looks like in the spirit when someone gives their life to Christ. But I could imagine that night I got saved when sin and death were about to close its door. Jesus. Hey, if you want to come, you can come. I mustered up everything inside of me. I put my head down. I couldn't even look at my father. And I walked out of that house. Little did I know, 2 years later, or a year and a half later, I would accept Christ in a church setting on a Wednesday night at a youth group. A guy that brought me to church never would have thought that that kid he brought in would ever do anything with his life. Why do I tell you this story? Because whether you're my 4-year-old daughter or you're a jacked up atheist, the gospel's for everyone. For everyone. For everyone. Can I tell you 2 more stories? I promise I'll be your favorite preacher because I'm fast. You know, I've been preaching for the last decade in Los Angeles. I've preached in the amazing neighborhoods of South Central, East LA, Compton, places you want to walk at night with all your valuables out, okay? I literally preached off of Piru Street. If you don't know what Piru Street is, it's where the Bloods originated. I preached in Compton in these schools. And this one particular school I preached at was in East LA. It was called Roosevelt. Roosevelt, we had a Bible club in that school of 450 kids a week. We're the largest club in the entire LAUSD. Every single week for 4 years, I'd show up and I'd preach. Well, it's one particular week, we decided we're gonna give away free Dre Beat headphones. So how many of you know when you say free Dre Beats in the hood, everybody and their mama's coming? So we say free. Bible club that day is packed. So I'm preaching, right? And during my message, I could tell kids are getting antsy. They're kind of like, all right, bro, where's the headphones? So halfway in the message, I'm like, how many of y'all came for the headphones? Everybody's like, ah, you know. I'm like, jerks. All right. I said, bring out the headphones. So we bring out the headphones, right? So here's what I did. What I did was I got these headphones and I took them out of the box and I wrapped an empty box. But nobody knew this. So I grabbed this box and I stick it in the middle of the gym. Remember, 450 kids packed out in bleachers. I put this box in the middle of the gym and I said this. I said, on the count of 3. How many of y'all know on the count of 3, people will lose their dignity? Weaves will be pulled. Nose rings will be ripped. I mean, it's about to get crazy. I said, on the count of 3, first one down here gets these headphones. 1, 2, 3. And as I got to 3, everyone was about to rush the stage or rush the bleachers. As I got to 3, this one gangbanger, Lalo, stands up. And when he stands up, everyone sits down. Lalo walks up like this. So that I'm like. So I grab these headphones, empty box, and I give it to him. I says, take this, but before you sit down, you got to open it in front of everybody. He's like, all right. He goes, yo, this box is empty, bro. I said, yeah, just like your life. I was like, please don't stab me, you know. I've seen those movies. So I'm like, just like your life, bro. I said, without Jesus, you're a nicely packaged box, but you got nothing inside. I said, bring me the headphones. So they bring me the headphones. I said, these are for you. He goes, are they real? I'm like, yeah, they're real. I'm like, but let me ask you 2 questions before you sit down. I said, 1, do you know me? He goes, no. I said, 2, do you deserve these? He goes, no. I said, it's just like the love of God, man. You don't know him. You don't deserve it. But he wants to give it to you anyways. So sit down. So he sits down, right? And that day I did what I've done for a decade. I call people to give their lives to Jesus. Not Jesus and your drugs. Not Jesus and your rag. Not Jesus. I mean, literally, in these schools, it was so real, so raw. I was like, man, if you're in this gymnasium and you've never given your life to Christ, you know what I love about campuses? Is kids don't have to be there. It's lunch. It's not some mom drugged their kid to youth group and they hate everybody. You know what I appreciated about those kids in the hood? At least they were more real than most people I met in the church. You know why? Because for them, that little 20-minute message was the only glimpse of peace they're getting from the abusive father they got at home. For them, that little 15-minute, 20-minute message and maybe a slice of pizza if there's some left over was the only bit of connection to God they have ever had in their life. Why is it that we end up coming to church, we end up getting saved, and all of a sudden we think we need Jesus less than those people? So I did what I did most of my years. I said, if you're in this gym and you've never received Jesus and you want to, I said on the count of 3, you're gonna stand to your feet. You're not gonna bow your heads and close your eyes on the greatest decision of your life. Why are we asking you to hide a public decision you're gonna need to live out? I said, if you're in this gym, so you stand up for fight, but there's 2 things you stand up for in high school. Fights and something for free. You know what I'm talking about? Like really. I said, if you're here and you want to give your life to Jesus, on the count of 3, stand to your feet. 1, 2, 3, no one stands. How many of y'all know that's when you start encouraging yourself in the Lord, like it's all good, right? The angels are standing somewhere, right? Y'all know those people? How many people were there? 10,000 people? No angels, like shut up, it doesn't count. No one stands. About 20 seconds later, Lalo, the gangbanger. Hold on. When he stands, 449 students. I will never forget the sound of shoes thundering down the bleachers in East Los Angeles as someone in their early 20s preaching. And these kids circled and we prayed. Kids were weeping. Why? Because the gospel is for everyone. I'm going to tell you one more story. It's probably the greatest story that I've ever encountered. In 2019, I was with my wife. We're watching a movie, Instant Family. If you guys ever seen it, I know most of you just watched The Passion of the Christ on repeat. But we were watching Instant Family, and I was weeping at this adoption movie, thinking like, I want to do that. I want to adopt. You ever watch a movie, you're like, that's me. Not really, but that's me. And I'm weeping. And I got a pillow over my face. And my wife looks at me, she goes, hey, when's the last time you talked to your sister? I was like, my sister? I said, oh, it's been years. Nothing bad happened. I just lost touch with her and got busy and had a family. And she goes, I really think you should reach out to your sister. I said, I don't think that's a good idea. I said, I don't even think she wants to talk to me. It's been so long. She goes, I really think you should reach out to your sister. I said, I don't want to reach out to my sister. She goes, I really think. I said, I don't want to, but if you want to, here. And I'm hoping she's going to end the conversation. She goes, give me your phone. So she calls my sister, and I'm like, she ain't going to answer. She answers. So they pick up the phone. They start talking. And my wife's like, hey, why don't you come over for like 4 days? I'm like, one day, right? Why don't you come over for 4 days? I'm like, my sister's on speaker. She goes, I would love that. She goes, your brother's real excited to see you. It's been years since I've seen my sister. So I show up at LAX, and I pick up my sister, except this time she's no longer this 6-year-old little sister. I'm the oldest of 6. She's no longer this 6-year-old, 7-year-old little girl anymore. She's now 18. She's on drugs. She's drinking. And she's in a lesbian relationship for 2 years. Everything you would say is contrary to the faith. So we get in the car, we get home, and we start catching up on life. I mean, it's like catching up, talking a long time on the couch. Pretty soon it's dark, it's nighttime, my wife goes to sleep. And my sister starts opening up about the abuse she had gone through, things I didn't even know about. So she's pouring her heart out to me, and I'm just listening, right? And all of a sudden I'm moved. I'm so moved on this couch, and I'm like, can you just hang on one moment? So I run to my bedroom, I wake up my wife, I'm like, honey, I know this sounds crazy, but do you think like Zalia could like stay maybe a couple more days? I just feel like God wants to do something. She's like, of course. Well, those 4 days turned into 4 weeks. My sister's, she's kind of crazy and messy. I'm like a clean freak, so I'm like having a broom behind her, walking through the whole house. I'm taking her to stores in LA. Some stores are inappropriate, just waiting outside. I'm like, I'm not going in there. We're having fun. One night, she's in the room, she's talking to her girlfriend. And I go to my wife and I says, hey, it's time. She goes, it's time for what? I go, it's time I tell her about the man that changed my life. So we go to the room, right? It's my daughter's room. And my daughter's room is not godly. It's not like there's like, crosses in there. He wasn't in the closet, playing. It wasn't like there's, that would have been weird, right? He just pops out. There's nothing godly about her. It's like Frozen and unicorns. And my sister was sleeping in my daughter's room. She's talking to her girlfriend, and so I knock. It's my sister. What? Go, hey, Zalia. It's me. I just want to talk to you. She goes, hey, it's my brother. I got to go. I'll call you back. She goes, come in. So we go into her room, me and my wife. She's sitting on the floor, so we sit on the ground. I said, hey, Z, I wanted to tell you, I've been all over the world. I've traveled, and I've talked about this man, but I don't think I've ever shared him with you. I said, I want to tell you about the man that changed my life. So I began to tell her about Jesus. I began to tell her about the gospel, the good news. And all of a sudden I said, hey, would you like to receive him? tears in her eyes. She goes, no. I said, no. Why? Tears filled her eyes even more. And she goes, look at me. She goes, I drink. I do drugs. I'm with a woman. Look at me. Why would God want this? And I said, Celia, he made that decision 2,000 years ago that he wanted this. Hold on. Hold your claps. With tears in her eyes, I said, do you want to receive Jesus? She goes, yes. And on the floor of my daughter's room, my sister, this alcoholic, this on drugs, this lesbian relationship, accepted Christ. That's pretty crazy. She's like, what do I do next? I'm like, you're going to YWAM. She's like, what's that? I'm like, don't worry about it. Call Andy Bird. I'm like, take her, please. We sent her to Kona, and I'll never forget the day she called me. She was crying. She goes, Brian. She goes, I forgave Mom. I forgave Dad. She goes, Brian, I don't want to be with women anymore. She goes, Brian, Jesus has set me free. During her DTS, I don't know if we can play this video. I fly to Kona. This was your cue. That was your, there we go. And this is my sister.
You died on the cross and rose again 3 days later? Yes. Awesome. And I'm going to baptize you. Plug your nose. Other hand right here. Hold it tight. I'm going to baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
The gospel is for everyone. It's even for you, believer, who's been on that fence. And you're like, you come to services, and you feel like, why would I answer another altar call? It doesn't do anything. You don't know what axe to the tree of that sin is the last blow to knock it down. You don't know what moment. My sister had no idea. She came to me after she had accepted Christ. She's like, but I still feel these feelings for women. What do I do? I says, don't worry, God is big enough. You just keep going to God. There was even a moment that got rocky. I thought she was gonna leave, and I got so discouraged, and my wife's like, I'm gonna fast. I just wrote about my sister in a book that I'm writing, and I had to get her permission to talk about her name. And I sent it to her. She goes, Brian, I want you to know that moment was one of the greatest moments of my life. The gospel's for everyone. And I refuse to look at a room like this and assume everyone knows Jesus. So I want to do something tonight. I want to give you the same opportunity that my daughter had, that I had, that Lalo had, that my sister had. Maybe you got drug in here because someone promised you a Jamba Juice. Maybe you've been coming for a while. It's kind of like, what is this? I'm not sure. Maybe you've been in the school for a while, but you still don't know Jesus. The gospel's for you. Could you do me a favor? Just hold the hand of the person next to you. It's all over the room. Come on, all over the room. Just hold the hand. If you're sitting next to that girl you like, now's your chance. Just playing. Come on, just hold the hand of the person next to you. Come on, if you're sitting alone, find someone, just reach over, just hold the hand of the person next to you. Here's what I want to do. Few things, listen. If you've never received Jesus and you want to, just gently squeeze the hand of the person next. Just gently squeeze the hand of the person next to you. Not crazy, not bloody knuckles, uncrazy. If you're like, man, I've never made this decision. I don't even know what this is fully entailing, but man, I want to follow this man, Jesus. Gently squeeze the hand of the person next to you. If you've been on the fence or you feel like you've walked away from God and you're no longer following him, because the question is never, does God love you? The question is, do you love God? The Bible says to love him is to obey his commands. We're living in a generation of progressive Christianity. You know what that is? Progressive Christianity is the cross with no cost. The promise with no price. Does not exist. That's not Christianity. There is a price in which you will pay. You will lay down your life. You pick up your cross and you'll deny your life. Progressive Christianity says lay down your cross and pick up your life. It's not what the Bible says. If you've been straddling that fence, gently squeeze the hand of the person next to you. If you've never received Jesus, if someone squeezed your hand, will you stand up with them right now? All over the room. If someone squeeze your hand, will you stand up with them? Anybody? Anybody? Then let me go bolder. You didn't squeeze anybody's hand. Come on, you gonna stand up? You gonna stand up? Hold on. If you didn't squeeze someone's hand and you don't want to walk out of this room the same, on the count of 3, will you stand? Come on. 1, 2, 3. No. You are standing to accept Christ, not just like you are standing to say, I want to really follow Jesus with all my heart. I want to make that clear. I'm not trying to get no courtesy stands. I don't need you to stand up to make me feel good, okay? You don't want to leave the same. We got a few people standing up here. Come on. Who else? Who else? Will you come down here and join me right here? If you stood, will you come and join me right here? Can we give it up for these people real quick? Come on, just stay right here for me. I'm not gonna move. I'm gonna hover here for a little bit longer. Listen, if you're in this room, don't leave the same. Don't leave the same. If you've been on this fence or you've never even met Jesus, you came into this room randomly and you want to know him. You know, when I proposed to my wife, I think I got the greatest proposal story ever. If you want to hear it, come talk to me later. But let me tell you this, the greatest proposal, ladies, in human history is not this. The greatest proposal in human history. It's a man that gave his full life, even unto death. If you're in this room and you want to follow Jesus and you've never made that decision, will you come up here right now? I'm going to wait 15, 20 more seconds. Anybody? 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 Awesome. Come on. This is amazing. You know, the Bible says that heaven rejoices. I promise you, it doesn't sound like this golf clap they're giving you right now. Heaven rejoices when a sinner repents. When I stood at the altar with my wife, we didn't stand there making vows that we'd be perfect. We stood there making vows that we wouldn't quit. And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make some vows. How many of you know that a wedding is one day, unto a marriage which is a lifetime? That's what this moment is right now. Can we pray? Can you all stand with me? One more chance. If you want to get up here, and you want your life to be right with God, get up here. You're living in sin. You need to get right with God. Get up here. Come on. Come on, get up here. Awesome. Can we get some leaders just to get around these people? Is that okay? We're going to pray. Pastor Adam, can you come up here?